I'm heading out to pick this morning. Well, it's almost noon now. But I thought I'd show y'all the fall garden. It's not even August yet. It's the middle of July. But we have to start calling it the fall garden. Maybe it makes us feel cooler. I don't really know. But there's pumpkins growing here, so maybe that's why it's the fall garden. Not everything that we transplanted did well. In fact, some of it did really, really poorly because we started it in the greenhouse and then our timing was off. There was a lot of different things that played into it, but our timing was off and it ended up in the greenhouse much longer than it should have been before we got it transplanted, which was a lot more stress on the plants than what we aimed for. But what's out here is looking good, so I thought I'd show you. So this particular patch we call McBrooms. If you've ever read the children's books, I think they're written in like the 60s, I believe, about McBroom's farm. And they have this wonderful 1-acre farm and they can grow anything there, but he's always making up tall tales about it. But this particular piece usually produces really well, so we call it McBrooms. But these are pumpkins. So this row, there's not very many in here because these are supposed to be the really huge pumpkins. So since you don't eat these, they're just kind of for funsies. We didn't want to plant too many, but we've got lots of flowers. So this is a male flower, male flowers. Don't see any female flowers on this one. Let's keep going and see if we can find some. Just because this came up recently. Oh, we lost another one. That one was looking okay the other day. So someone recently told us that because of where they bought their squash plants, they only had female bloom, or only male blooms, and so they weren't getting any fruits. And I just wanted to cover that as long as I'm out here looking at squash. Oh, there's a bee in that one. Hello, bee. Oh, she's old and tired. There she goes. So squash, pumpkins, all of these things are going to have both male and female flowers on them. I'm not seeing any on these, so I'm going to keep going and see what I can find. These are pie pumpkins in this row, so these will be the ones yay big. We've sold those for a few years now. People tend to really enjoy them. Here we go on the butternuts. Here's one. Okay, so the male flowers, my shadow is kind of in the way. The male flowers do not have a fruit attached. The female flowers do have a fruit attached. And there's a squash bug. Let me squish that critter first. Okay, every squash plant will make both male and female flowers as long as it's in the right conditions for growing. Let's say it's too dry or too wet or not enough fertilizer or just a number of things. If the plant is not in the right growing conditions, it will not make both kinds of flowers. But squash plants do make both, regardless of where you bought them. As long as they're healthy plants, they will make both. So this one has a whole bunch of those male blooms. You can see there's no fruit on them. And then there's a female bloom. But these are little bitty. They're a long way out from producing still. Or not a long way, a few weeks. But if you've ever wondered, that's the situation on that. They do make both onto each plant. So lots of squash in here. Love those pretty orange blooms. Not loving the squash bugs in here though. I always go through and smush the little piles of eggs that I find. And then I think that's some more squash there, and then starting there, it's either pickles or cucumbers. Brandon and the kids planted these while I was working on jelly a couple weeks ago, so I don't remember what went where. But these will either be pickles or cucumbers, and that'll be the other one over there. And then we have some more green beans. So that's awesome. So these are starting to make, we've got the blooms all in there. I just showed you that, and I was going to try to show you. Every time I move, I lose track of what I'm looking at. There we go. There's a patty pan in there that's not too much longer before it'll be ready. So that's exciting. Okay, then we have peas. We only did fall purple whole peas this year because of the wheat. We didn't have a space open to plant them in the spring, so only fall, but they're looking good. Brandon came through and cultivated yesterday, got some of the weeds out of the middles. We use this giant sprinkler. He stands it up in the middle and runs the hose out and waters them that way. So they'll be getting watered again this week. They're looking pretty good. They're not blooming or anything like that yet. They're still pretty young. We hope to be picking these end of August or 1st of September. I love the fall peas. I think it's easier to pick them in the fall. The humidity isn't as high, so it feels a little less scorching hot outside. So there's peas, and then we have fall corn. And I haven't looked at the corn in a while, so I'm excited to see how it's doing. I see we have some weeds in the corn as well, but the corn itself is looking pretty good. All of that right through there, that's all corn. So this will be sweet corn again, just like we grew this spring. Looks like this row didn't come up very good for some reason. We use very old planters for this, and sometimes we have planter malfunctions on it and it skips spaces and doesn't plant. So there wasn't anything ready to pick in the fall stuff just yet. There's a few squash in there that we'll be watching over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully they'll be starting to come in pretty good on that side soon, because as you can see, the spring stuff has really slowed down. We have gone through this week and done a lot of weeding and cultivating and different stuff, trying to kind of help these plants bounce back for the fall. So hopefully we'll have kind of both sets producing there for a little bit. Next thing I'm going to pick is okra, and okra loves it hot and dry, so okra is looking really good. So I'm going to pick that, and then I'll show you the rest of the spring stuff that's still going right now. This is our second planting of squash right here, and they just did not take off this year. I'm not fully sure why that is, but they've been really pitiful. I'm thinking it's a fertility issue. I really think they are just spindly from lack of fertility. But we pick these slightly smaller when they're on these small plants, because what we found is, like, this one is growing this little yellow squash, but it's not trying to put on any more because it's putting all of its effort into this little one. So what we do is we try to pick them a little bit smaller and try to encourage them to keep going and to go a little faster. It does mess us up at market though, because we typically do squash $1 each, and obviously the squash I just showed you was not worth $1 each. Those were too small, so kind of messes us up there. But these have plenty of sun. They've had rain and irrigation, so I don't think it's a liquid issue, a irrigation issue. I think it's a fertility situation where they just need more fertilizer. Most likely what has happened is by the time these went out, a lot of our fertilizer had kind of leached out due to the really heavy rains this spring. So that's why they're just looking a little sadder. And there's more of those squash bug eggs. I squish those every time I find them, because they'll either end up being squash bugs or vine borer moths, and I don't want either one on the squash. All right, the rest of the spring stuff is really looking very sad now. Again, these plants through here, this is where we were picking. These were like 4 foot tall. This is where we picked literally hundreds and hundreds of pounds of squash. So these have been at it for a while. I do think they are needing some fertilizer. So we have a tool that will help us with that. We just don't have it fully set up yet. So we have something called a fertilizer pump, which will allow us to put fertilizer through our drip irrigation that goes under the plastic and give that fertilizer directly to the roots of these plants. So the goal is to get that set up and operational very, very soon. We need a few parts for it, but we also have some other projects that are kind of, yeah, we're trying to juggle too much. That's what it boils down to. So the yellow zucchini are still making half decently, but most other things through here are about done. They are tired and they are just not making very well. So we're probably going to have a little bit of, not necessarily a gap, but there just won't be as much of the squash between when this is kind of going out and the next stuff is coming in. So I don't know that we'll have any time when we just don't have any squash like we do most years, but it will be a bigger gap. These are the sort of things that we're having to kind of figure out for ourselves. There wasn't a previous generation farming with us to teach us all these things. So that's pretty much the garden. Like I say, spring stuff is on its way out. Fall stuff is still coming. Oh, there's still lots of tomatoes. The whole sea of green, that's all tomatoes. And they're a little bit slower right now because of the heat, but we're still picking those as well, and I think they'll come on back for the fall as well. So that's about it. That's the update. Like I say, we're still picking. It's just not going to be quite as much. We're going to have some low weeks in here before that next stuff starts going, but that's okay. It's still coming. We still have plenty of onions for sure. Like I say, we're getting lots of cherry tomatoes. We have the jam, and we have pickles. We have eggs. We have lots of good stuff. This will probably be the last week that we have potatoes. Those are almost gone. This week, maybe one more. We'll see. They're almost gone. It's mostly down to the itty bitty tiny ones now. But there's your update on the garden. That's how everything is looking right now. Now you know. Thank y'all for stopping by the farm. Be sure and come back when you can stay longer.